there are thousands of Southern Oregons who are relying on the Oregon Health Plan and Medicaid for their medical coverage. How are you justifying, supporting working requirements changing and funding cuts that could result in, I think across the country it was up to over 7.5 million people could lose their Medicaid. So what are your thoughts with that?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for asking. The Medicaid program is extremely important. It's essential for many, many, many people. And that's why it was created back in 1965 to help people who didn't have money, who absolutely needed care, particularly older people. So let me start by saying it's an essential program, and much of what we're doing is designed to make sure it remains a viable program, a sustainable program. The cost of Medicaid has gone through the roof over the past 10 to 15 years. It's astounding how far and how much it's expanded. Even the most liberal person will tell you that there is waste and fraud and abuse in that program, and that's what we are addressing. That's exactly what we're addressing. So I just want to point out that 40% of my district is on Medicaid, 40%. And that's illustrative, I think, of a whole bunch of things. One is that we don't have the type of jobs we used to have that let people earn the money they need so they don't have to be on Medicaid. So this getting back into the woods is a really, really important thing. And making better use of our resources is important. So we reduce the number of people on Medicaid. The population that's covered by Medicaid, about 1.4 million people in Oregon roughly, about 60% will not be involved in the work requirements at all, because they are in the original group of people for whom the program was established. The other 40% are what we call the expansion population, or the Affordable Care Act population, and that 40% will be exposed to the work requirements. Of those, we think about 380,000 will be exposed in Oregon to that work requirement, but many are already working, roughly 60%. So that takes you down to about 170,000 people who may not be working for whatever reason. There are many exceptions to the work requirement. For example, if you're taking care of an elderly relative, if you're taking care of a little kid, if you're unable to work, if you're in a place where the unemployment rate is 8% or higher, all of those kinds of exceptions are there to protect people who have to work. But the first thing one has to understand is that this is not, you're not going to somebody that's in a nursing home and saying, hey, you got to get a job. That's not what's happening. What's happening is we're going to young people who are doing nothing for whatever reason and saying, if you want free or almost free medical care, you need to get out and at least volunteer. It's 20 hours a week, and you can volunteer for it. You can go to school for it. You can get a job for it. You can be taking care of someone to meet that requirement. And if people say, well, if I start working, I'm going to work my way right out of eligibility, the answer is no. If you look at those 20 hours a week and see how much the $15 an hour, it's still roughly half to 2/3 of what you can earn and still be eligible for Medicaid.
Yeah, and I just think that there are a lot of older adults, a lot of low-income families who, they hear this and they're still kind of nervous about, some of these changes. And so are there any provisions that you're putting forth to make sure that 40% of your district, is, safe with their benefits?
Well, they're safe with their benefits. The question is, will they make the choice to work if they're able? If they make the choice not to work, then they still will have care, because we still have the requirement that if you go to the emergency room, you will receive stabilizing care. And many people right now who qualify for Medicaid don't get on it because they go to the emergency room. You know why? The wait for Medicaid's on the national average about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. So if you go to the ER, their average wait is 3 hours. So many people go, well, I'm not going to wait 3 weeks. I'm going to go to the emergency room. So that safety net is there. And so for people to say, well, we're not going to have any medical care, no, yes, you do. It's just that it won't be Medicaid because you, for whatever reason, have decided you don't want to work. By the way, there's 21 million people in America not working. They're not even trying to work. They're not counted in the unemployment list. What are they doing? I mean, so yeah, everybody has an obligation in this country to try to make this country work, and that means producing. That means doing things. And so the goal here is that we remind people that nothing's free, and they need to be in there like the rest of us, like you and others, working.
And also, as well, SNAP, there are also some age requirements changing with work as well. And so, parents who have children, they now have to go, or, have the same work requirements now. Instead of having children that are 18, now it's down to 7. And then again, the adult age range is now extending from 54 to 64. And so what were the goals specifically with those changes?
Well, so I'm not on the egg committee where those changes were made, but I certainly have studied them. And the concept is that the program, like all of these programs, has become more and more and more expensive. And we're having to figure out some way of making sure we preserve the program. The SNAP program is another essential, important program, and one that many people in my district correctly take advantage of. So the challenge has been, how do we make sure that those who can work are working and are not simply living off the government? Those are why we're taking those steps. There's also something that's really, really sad that's happened in Oregon on that program, and that is that since Oregon doesn't have any skin in the game as a state, it has abused the amount of SNAP benefits given to people, and many times, I want to say last year, I hope my numbers are right, 244 million in benefits that were inappropriately extended. 244, that's Oregon. And so we can't have that. So one of the changes in the SNAP program is to say, okay, every state will be responsible for 5% of the program's cost. And thus, if you're giving away money, you're giving away a bunch of it's yours. And if without that skin in the game, the program is being abused. We can't have that. All of these programs have to work better, more efficiently, and do a better job of protecting the people that need the protection.
And I know part of that also was that the state will also have to front 75% of the costs for the administrative costs for SNAP. Is there any concern there with Oregon, finding that room in their budget to fund that?
Well, of course there's concern. I was in the Oregon legislature for 12 years. I understand the challenges that the budget writers in Salem face. On the other hand, they cannot be cavalier with the federal government's money either. So the challenge there is to make sure that the state is doing its part in managing this program. This, by the way, I want to emphasize, we will still, I'm going back to Medicaid for a minute. People said there's cuts. We will spend more next year on Medicaid than we did this year. So how can people come in and say, well, you're cutting? You go, stop. We're spending more. And so that's going to be true on into the future. The idea is, how in the world do we slow down this explosion of cost? And the same is true with Medicaid, with SNAP.
Perfect. And, we talk a lot about decreasing funding and making sure that there's not fraud in the system. But then the part of the big, beautiful bill is that there's an increase in funding for defense spending. And so I was just wondering, where is the, a lot of people look at that and they say, oh, well, we have the biggest army in the country, or in the world. Why are we increasing that funding but defunding, SNAP and Medicaid?
I don't think we have the biggest army in the world. I think China does, but I think we have the biggest military in that sense. Also, China is dramatically increasing its fleet of ships. I think it went by us on the fly some time ago. But what's really challenging is to watch the war in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia, and see how that war is being fought. It's being fought with drones. And so if you look at the increase that's in the bill, much of it is focused on increasing our ability to utilize drones and all that goes with that kind of warfare. And so what you see happening is an evolution of how wars are fought, and that evolution is being addressed in this bill. The world is a dangerous place, and there, by the way, I'm a huge supporter of the military, but I would also say, I will assure you, that there's waste, fraud, and abuse there, and we have people looking into that on our committees right now. And so the challenge is, how do we make sure we maintain our military while at the same time addressing those issues?
So there's making sure that there's no fraud across the entire aspect of all of this and not just these specific areas.
Absolutely true, and absolutely true. It's the military has always had an advantage in the sense that we know we absolutely have to protect ourselves. So I understand the reluctance to delve too deeply into that space, but we're doing that.
Perfect. And I know part of this, this bill as well, there's, no tax on tips, the Trump kids savings, and then, some of these tax cuts, but they're only lasting through the Trump presidency. And so I'm just wondering, what is, why draw the line there? Are they not, sustainable long term?
Well, that's a great question. So this is a reconciliation bill. So it has special rules that apply to it. And so many of the dates that you see on different things, whether it's when certain new approaches to SNAP or new approaches to Medicaid take place when they start, all of those are designed to fit into that reconciliation space. One would, of course, want those programs to last longer than just the Trump presidency, but there's the small matter of making sure they fit into the reconciliation numbers. As I'm sure seen, there's many people in my caucus who are very unhappy with any sort of expenditure, be it on the tax side or on any other side. And so our goal has been to balance these things out, and that's what you see happening with those dates.